Back. It was a terrifying week back in 1966. That December, Myron Lance and Walter Kelbach went on a killing spree that left 6 people dead in just 5 days' time.
Last night on the Justice Files, it was about the crime. Tonight, in part 2, ABC4's senior crime and punishment correspondent Marcos Ortiz again turns back the pages of Utah's history to focus on a rare criminal occurrence, team serial killers, in tonight's Justice Files report.
This is where Lolly's Tavern stood 53 years ago. Back then, it turned into a bloodbath that night. 3 people were killed, 3 survived, police were called. On December 21st, 1966, Walter Kelbach and Myron Lance's reign of terror came to an end.
At this point, they were ordered out of the car at gunpoint.
And after a week of terror, it's over. The arrest of Myron Lance and Walter Kelbach ends the bloodbath that began in Kearns and comes to a climax at Lolly's Tavern in Salt Lake City.
Forced the bartender to take the cash drawer and empty it into one of the men's pockets, turned around and fired one shot directly at a man. The witness thought he was pretending, saw the man fall, saw the blood, and the shooting continued. The witness stated that he knew both of these men had played dead, and that's why he was not shot.
In December 1966, Lance and Kelbach are accused of killing 6 in 5 days. 18-year-olds James Stephen Shea and Michael Holtz are kidnapped, raped, and shot to death. Taxicab driver Grant Strong is murdered after picking up the pair. And James Sizemore, Frank Lilly, and Beverly Mace are gunned down during a robbery at Lolly's Tavern. Lloyd Graven, the bartender at the tavern, tells the Salt Lake Tribune,
"It was like sitting in a foxhole at the battlefront. He turned on me and shot point blank. The concussion of the shot knocked me down. He leaned over the bar and shot at me lying on the floor. How he missed me, I'll never know."
About a half hour later, Kelbach and Lance are placed in handcuffs after leaving Lolly's Tavern.
Then I went to the driver's side where Kelbach was sitting and ordered him to put his hands upon the steering wheel. He didn't act at the first time.
Where was your weapon at the time?
It was in the side of his head.
Forensic and crime specialist Mitch Pilkington teaches criminal justice at Weber State, but he focuses on serial killers.
One of the pieces of this case that sets it apart from so many other cases is simply the rapid succession in which the crimes were committed.
The 2 are charged with the murders and sentenced to die. Lance chooses the firing squad and Kelbach wants to be hanged. Then the unbelievable happens. Kelbach and Lance and other inmates escape from Utah's state prison in 1968.
And now it wasn't limited just to Salt Lake or to Utah. I mean, it was nationwide panic. You had this group of individuals, violent individuals, that were roaming the streets somewhere.
But by the weekend, the pair are caught in Burley, Idaho. But in 1972, the U.S. Supreme Court calls the death penalty unconstitutional, and they're sentenced to life in prison with a chance of parole. Families of the victims are horrified.
They were extremely upset and offended about that decision.
That same year, in an interview with NBC, Lance shows no remorse.
Any feelings toward the victims?
Neither does Kelbach.
People getting hurt because I just like to watch it.
Those comments would be what we would associate with a psychopath.
In 1992, the 2 men are up for parole. Kelbach is now 53 years old. Lance, 51. They've been in prison for 26 years. Families of the victims worry they could be released.
We lost a son. Our other children lost a brother. That loss will always be felt by all of us. The nightmare is always with us.
But Lance knows better.
I don't see how you could ever let me out. I think the hearing has been a waste of their time as well as mine. I see that there's no possible way that I'll ever be granted a release, and if I was in their shoes, I'd feel the same way as they do.
Is there anything you would like to say or have a response?
No.
For the families of the victims, it turns out to be the last time they'll see Lance and Kelbach.
Neither one said that they were sorry, and they're not. So it's too bad they didn't carry out the death penalty. It would have saved these families a lot of grief, because every time it comes up, they live the nightmare again.
the killers never did apologize to the families of the victims. Myron Lance died in 2010, Walter Kellback last August. Utah's first serial killers were never released from prison. For the Justice Files, Marcus Ortiz, ABC 4 News.